Well, good morning, and thank you all for coming. It's Josh and I have talked about this for several weeks now, actually over a month, and each time we delayed it because we had a chance to kind of sign another one or another player that we felt would be an integral piece to the upcoming 23-24 season. And each year, it doesn't matter the sport, you want to be excited about your returning players. You want to be excited about your recruiting class. And of course, what we're talking about here is obviously on paper, but yet I could not be more excited about this class that we've been able to assemble, and much of the credit goes to Coach Willie Powers, Coach Isaac Brown, who you all may not be aware has left our staff to pursue other professional endeavors, and then Assistant Coach Craig Brown just did an outstanding job, one of helping to identify players that be a great fit, players that we need to help us compete for a SWAC championship. And again, I could not be more pleased with the, I think, eight-player group that I think we've assembled. And we signed two players in the fall, and I'll start with KJ Parker. And he's a 6'1" freshman from Winter Haven High School. And the first word comes to mind with him, he's a winner. He's won. He's a starting point guard at Bartow High School. They won the 6A state championship. He started on that team. I think he averaged 12, 14 points a game as a sophomore. And he transferred for his senior year to Winter Haven High School, where he came within 2 points. I think of winning the 7A state championship. I think KJ had a three-pointer at the buzzer to actually help advance Winter Haven to the state championship game. And KJ is a player that wanted to be here from the start. And that's really, really important. He wasn't sitting around waiting on offers from, perhaps schools from bigger conferences, Power 5 conference, Power 6, whatever. This is where he wanted to be. And that's really, really important. And every time I talk to him, Coach, I can't wait to get there. Coach, I can't wait to get started. And so really excited about KJ. He can really shoot the basketball. I've said to our staff, KJ really reminds me a lot of a play we had a couple of years ago by the name of Jalen Spear, in terms of, I think they are the two most prepared players coming out of high school that we've had since I've been here. And of course, you may wonder, well, what about MJ Randolph? MJ had a great freshman year. As you know, he was MEAC Freshman of the Year, but yet these two guys offensively are just further along. And so really excited about KJ. We also signed Morrell Schramm, a 6'3" guard from Chattanooga, Tennessee, played at Chattanooga State, began his career at East Tennessee State. And unfortunately, his 22-23 season was cut short with injuries, but he's a player, has a great feel, high basketball IQ. We've been kidding him about we're going to play him at the power forward spot because of his body. He's coming off of ankle injury, foot injury, so his season was cut short. So he's kind of a little bit bigger than what he would like to be, but he's kind of a physical presence. He's 6'3". He'll play at maybe 210, 205, 210, but really big for a guard. So those two players we signed during the early signing period. What we did, I think, that's really going to be a difference maker. We put an emphasis on being more physical. I think any league that you're in, you look at what are the teams at the top of the league, the teams that's been the best on a consistent basis. What do they have that you don't have? What areas of the game have you fallen short? And when I think about the Texas Southerns, whether it's Grambling, Alcorn State, those teams have been more physical, than we've been. And so I dare say I think we've shored that up. We are bringing in Shannon Grant. Shannon is he lists as 6'10", but I'm not so sure. He may not be taller than that. And he'll play at around 270. Just a really, really skilled player. Very skilled. His season was cut short with the foot injury. But when I watched his game against Sanford, I think he had 23 points and, I don't know, 15, 17 rebounds. Just a body and a physical presence that we haven't had. And so I'm really, really excited about him. And then we have Jadarius Eatman, who goes by JD. And he's 6'9". He'll play at probably 245. And he played at Lawson State Community College in Birmingham. He's from Birmingham. And he was, I want to say, 5th in the nation in field goal percentage. So when you see a player making 70% of his field goal attempts, that tells you what? He's getting a lot of baskets at the basket. Okay, probably a lot of points within 5 feet of the basket, a lot of dunks. And so he's not as skilled as Shannon, but yet he brings more explosiveness than Shannon. And to tell you how we approach this is kind of rare. We brought those two guys in the same weekend. Staff talked about it, said, no, you know what? Chemistry is important as well. And being a good teammate is really important. And we never wavered on that. We didn't try to hide them when they came in. And we brought 3 players in that weekend. And obviously we were able to get both of them. And so now that will give us an opportunity. Chances are one will start, one will come off the bench. But the intention is to be able to try and play the 2 of them together at least 10, 12 minutes a game. And of course our season is almost where it's you got non-conference, you got conference. But yet when you look at the number of Power 5 teams that we play, this team is certainly better prepared to meet that challenge. So those 2 players on the front line makes a great difference. And then since we're talking about physical presence, I'll talk about the last of our signees, Alvin Tumblin, 6'6", 6'7", 4-man, plays both forward spots. He's from Sebring, transferred from Stetson, and really excited about him. He's an explosive frontline athlete, very good one-on-one player, can really attack the basket. And I think he had he played, started probably half Stetson's games as a freshman, and kind of had a highlight of his season this past season was he had 15 points at Florida State in a win over Florida State. So Alvin is one of 2 players that's not here for the summer. As a matter of fact, we actually just signed him just last week. And again, we don't have a player like him either in terms of a player that can really create his own basket from within 15, 17 feet of the basket with this explosiveness, the toughness. So those 3 players that I just named, they're together. I did that because we were on the topic of being physical, playing with more toughness, being able to match those teams that's been the best teams in the league in our 2 years in the SWAC. And I think that's what you do. That's where if you're going to beat Texas Southern, you got to be able to line up. This team can line up with anybody in our league now, and not have to worry about, well, we can't match them in this area, we can't match them in that area. Then, as you know, you can't. Everything you do in basketball starts with good guard play. And last year, I think with about 3 games to go in the season, we were averaging around 16 turnovers a game versus 11 assists. So obviously you see you're a big deficit there. And I talked about KJ Parker. So now I'll talk about Love Bettis. Love is from Pensacola, Florida, and he was highly recommended by MJ Randolph. They've played together for a number of years there in the city of Pensacola, and Love was the starting point guard at Coffeyville Junior College on a national championship team. And not only did he start on that team, he also made the all-tournament team in Hutch that year. His teammate some of you may have watched the NIT championship. Point guard was the MVP in the NIT for North Texas. Those were backcourt mates at Coffeyville, and so Love has had a great deal of experience. His sophomore year, he was a JUCO All-American, transferred to A&T, and kind of right in the middle of a coaching change. Of course, the coach, they changed coaches, I think maybe 3 or 4 months after he signed there, and kind of finished the season with an interim coach. And Love's a gym rat, and I say that. You hear that phrase a lot, but a former coach in the area came over Monday to watch us work out. And so he texted me about 9:30, 10 o'clock Monday night. He said, "Coach, I realized I left my jacket there in the gym, so I came back to get my jacket, and Love Bettis was out shooting." And so that when if he had just said a player was out and I didn't know who it was, I would have guessed it was Love. And so that in and of itself, that's really going to help set the tone in terms of his work ethic and his love for the game. Love can really shoot the basketball, and defensively he can press. He can just pressure the ball 94 feet. So really, really excited about Love. Keith Lomar is would be one of our more versatile players. He's 6'6", 205. He'll play both forward spots, and he has the ability to get the rebound and start the break himself. And the more players you have that can do that, it should make your transition game a lot more effective, a lot more efficient, a lot more productive. In other words, you don't have to always just look for the point guard, just look for the point guard. And so when you have a player with that kind of versatility where you trust him to ignite your break, that talks about what his decision is. First of all, his skill set to handle the basketball, his decision making. And so again, he can score the ball at all 3 levels. So he's coming from South Georgia State. He began his career at Stetson. He's from Stockbridge, Georgia, just south of Atlanta. Then that leaves us, who are we now? We have, is it Rod Coffey? Rod Coffey is 6'4", 6'5" guard from Painesville, Ohio, just outside Cleveland. And he played his freshman year at Pensacola State Junior College. And big, strong guard, very skilled, can shoot the basketball, high basketball IQ. And so really excited about what he'll add to our backcourt. You bring in two small guards, you need bigger guards as well. So his size and ability to knock down the 3-point shot really strengthens our guard play. So I think is that all 8 of them? So again, this team was kind of put together with the mindset we've got to be able to compete with the upper echelon. And I think this group will realistically, of course, there's always going to be things you can't control, such as injuries, but in terms of the pieces, it really gives us the most realistic chance. We had a team our first year in the SWAC where we felt that the strength of that team was experience. We had 3 or 4 guys that had played together for quite some time. That team lacked the physical presence that's certainly needed. And so this team has all of that. And from early indications, this team also, chemistry is going to be that's always a big deal. And so from the looks of it, again, I could not be more excited.
Coach, this seemed kind of like you were being a little genius here because, like you were mentioning, you're looking to compete more with the big teams, and the portal apparently has been good to you. So, how much did you calculate that's where you have to go to find what you need to do what you want to do in terms of being competitive?
Great question, and it was intentional. It was very intentional. And so I mean, I've spoken with some of you all here, there, off the air, whatever, just maybe indirectly about the transfer portal, and I think coaches across the country have obviously approached it differently. Some have sort of been late to it, and now they're convinced. So quickly, that upper echelon group, what people usually refer to as your 4 and 5 star players, that group won't be impacted too greatly. So we're talking about the top 100, top 125 players, 125 players in the nation. That group won't be impacted. So the brunt of that group would be in Augusta beginning tomorrow, okay, for the Peach Jam. Okay, so the high major coaches would be there, but those 3 stars, those 2 stars, recruiting, in college, drafting at the professional levels, it's not an exact science. If that were the case, Miami would not have had 4 of the top 9 players in the playoffs that were undrafted. And so, but for the most part, the high school guys they're not gonna have the opportunities that they've had, that we've come to expect, over the years. And so when you can look in the portal and find a player, all things considered, all things you value, character and ability to succeed academically, you can get a player that once been away from home already, okay? He's had some success academically and basketball-wise at your level or higher. It's very difficult to pass on those opportunities. And so again, we went to the portal intentionally, and I tell you, we brought these 8 guys. 7 came in for official visits. The 8th one came in unofficial. From Rod Coffey came in from Pensacola State unofficially. We didn't bring in another player, so we batted 100. That's rare. And speaking of visits, some of you may recall last year we were sort of restricted from the penalties. So we signed what approximately 8-9 players last year, but it really wasn't ideal from the standpoint we could only bring 4 in for official visits, and that was the back end of the penalties. Those penalties started prior to COVID, but once COVID hit, the NCAA said, well, you can't go out watching anybody play, you can't bring anybody to campus anyway. So they waited until the COVID was over, and then we had to come back and pay, which was 12.5%. 12.5% of your visits is what we were restricted to. So yes, this was intentional to go to the portal. And the only other player we looked at the portal that we didn't get, we looked at a couple of guys who would have required waivers, who showed there was a mutual interest, but we weren't really willing to roll the dice at that point. In other words, they've already transferred once, and so would have been some extenuating circumstances where the NCAA would have had to grant them a waiver, and we just weren't willing to go down that road. Just thought that was too big of a dice to roll when there were other good players out there.
Coach, you talked about getting the right kind of guys in the portal, but I mean, you want to recruit winners, guys that know how to win. I mean, Keith has played in the NJCAA tournament. Love won a national title. I mean, Katie's not in the portal, but he won a high school state championship.
Yes.
But how important is getting those guys that know how to win and know what it takes to win to be kind of the leaders around the program?
Extremely, extremely important. And we've talked for years. Okay, how many players do you have that's won a state championship? And I don't know if I've been a part of many teams where you've had more than a couple. But now when you look at the teams that are your perennial Final Four teams competing for national titles and so forth, going to the tournament year in and year out, and you look at their roster, and that's what you're going to see. I'll give you another example. If you look at the NBA draft, in most years, you look at the players that are drafted first round, second round, you look at the percentage that played in the NCAA tournament. And so when winning breeds winning, when you bring in guys that's coming from winning programs like that, your message resonates a lot easier because they've been in winning locker rooms. They have a sense for what's required, the sacrifices, the teamwork. So that's extremely, extremely important.
Coach, I had a question. Knowing that you came from junior college, and having 5 of these guys have a stint in junior college, how much was being relatable to them and playing those junior college days impact their decision to come here?
Oh, I don't know, Gerald. That's been so long ago. To your point, my junior college dropped their program years ago. Here in Florida, I played at Seminole, which is in Sanford, Florida. So quite frankly, no, it did not. But again, I'm very open-minded. Of course, we've had players from junior colleges where it didn't work. But I don't like to think it was just because they came, from junior college. I think each player, each situation is unique in and of itself, and so the experience is important. For example, let's go back to the Love Batters. Coffeyville has a great tradition. I met their coach in 1996 when our staff left University of Florida to go to University of Illinois, and Illinois didn't take many JC players, probably never have. There's really not a great need to. But just the situation we were in, we felt we knew the best player on that team was a senior and didn't have a backup. But anyway, long story short, Coffeyville has just had a great program for quite some time. And then there had been a player some years ago that was from Pensacola, played at Coffeyville, played at University of Iowa, played in the NBA for quite some time, who actually recommended Love to Coffeyville. So Coffeyville is a program that needs no introduction. Jadarius Eatman started his career at State College of Jacksonville. And the coach there was Frank Burrell. Frank was on my interest in, we had 2 players that played for a former assistant coach of mine. Frank Burnell was on my staff at South Florida, as was Greg Gary, the head coach at Mercer, which is where Shannon Grant is from. So again, that was a great help, and that I knew that the coaches would be a straight shooter, and they were able to say, Coach, he's going to be a really good player for you for various reasons.
Coach, is this the new normal for coaches? Probably when you started coaches, you tried to get the continuity, and if you could get guys in there for 3 years together and build that continuity, and then you start out with that core and maybe bring 1 or 2 guys in. Now it seems like if you retain 2 or 3 guys from the previous team, you got to bring a whole new core around them.
Again, that's a great question, great point, and you could not, you hit it. And again, that's where we are. So simply put, the landscape of college athletics, I'll just stick to basketball, what I know, but I think all of us know it's relevant to other sports as well. But basketball, absolutely. So much of what you did, we could just go back to when I started here 6 years ago. And you look at the core, the guys that I feel. First of all, the first group that I inherited, it's hard to talk about my tenure here without bringing up Des Williams and Marcus and Elijah Williams, that group. But yet, you look at the core group we've had. We had DJ Darren Jones came in, although he started out at Tulane, so he redshirts a year here. So as it turned out, he was here 5 years because of COVID. All right, Cameron Reeves came in. Cameron and DJ actually visited, the first 2 players to visit during my tenure. Bryce Moraine came as a preferred walk-on, although I didn't let him play with our guys that summer. But he came, so those 3 guys. Then a year later, we added another high school guy. So all 3 of those were 4 high school guys. And they helped build the culture and everything that we've this led us to this point. But again, so you coaches have to quickly kind of adjust, make an about face. Otherwise, you're gonna be lost. You're gonna be behind because. I'll give you another example. There's only a couple of freshmen from last year in the league that really comes to mind. In other words, we're just not lining up playing against a lot of freshmen. In the freshman that Texas Southern had, he may have been freshman of the year, I want to say, but if you, his body, I mean, he was, I don't know, 6'3". He's built. He looked like a strong safety, an outside linebacker. And you're going, this kid's not a freshman, but again, so he was one of the few freshmen in the league. And so, yes, you had to change that philosophy and be able to adapt, and that's what we've done. And I could not feel stronger that we've done that effectively and successfully as we approach the 23-24 season.
Coach, another question about transfers, and you kind of talked about it a little bit already, because I know you brought some of them together, got them to know each other. Chemistry is everything. So
Yes.
how important was it to make sure when you're bringing these guys in that they do gel, they do mesh, that this is going to work? And I guess we don't know for sure yet, but it's important to kind of test it before you.
You're right. We don't know for sure, and I'm not going to elaborate too much on last year's group, but many of you all have been around me now a little bit, and I'm kind of a straight shooter. I knew last year was going to be a challenge. When I usually give the assistant coaches, I say, you all go over. We have, the coaches, you do preseason rankings, and so same thing postseason. Put down what you think. Let me look over it, and then I picked us 8th. In all honesty, that's the lowest I've picked any team since I've been here, including my first year. My first year here, there were at least 13 teams in the MEAC, I think, Vaughn, because that first year, Hampton and Savannah State were still in the league. And we picked 11th, and we finished 7th. I think 7th is about, where I think I picked us. So the fact that I picked us 8th was telling. So I knew it would be challenging. We had a core group of those guys here in the summer, so I already knew. I knew the guard play was going to be questionable, and we had 4 guys that didn't come. Period. Again, the guys that were restricted, we couldn't bring in for official visits, so they weren't here in the summer either. So, and we just never really gel from a chemistry standpoint. And there are things that we do like most teams do from a team building standpoint. And one of the things that we've done that's been really, really beneficial is the ROTC. We've done that this past year for the first time. We didn't do that. There was a changeover. And so the new staff wanted to wait a year, but they take the guys for 2 days at 5 a.m. for a couple of hours a day, and it's amazing what they can tell you about your team, physically and mentally, who you can depend on, who you can count on in 4 hours. It is amazing. So chemistry is going to be a big factor. And again, it's early. As you know, you can have your guys 8 weeks in the summer. 4 hours, 8 hours a week, 4 hours of instruction on the court, 4 hours in conditioning. Because we just bring our guys back for the second 6-week session, summer B. So Monday we started our second week of workouts. But again, I could not be more pleased with just so many small things we're seeing in terms of examples of players being great teammates, looking out for each other. Just some smaller things from a bonding standpoint, those things that you really, really want. And as coaches, you want your group to be able to take care of things on their own without coaches having to kind of push it or manufacture it. And that's what we've already begun to see this early, in preparation for the season. There we have 0 eligibility issues of any of the signees, and so 6 of the 8 are already here enrolled. And again, we just signed Alvin. He didn't visit until I think he visited during summer A, so it just wasn't realistic for him And Rod Coffey is coming in. He was a qualifier out of high school, which means he's coming in with 3 years to play. And so he had to take some additional hours to meet transfer requirements. And so he's just completed that last week. So 6 of the 8, along with the returning guys, are all here.
My last question. Parker is the only high school guy here, right?
That's correct.
And you talk about building this team to be competitive. What was the thing that you saw about this Parker kid that told you he can fit the plan that you have, he can work in the plan that you have?
The two summers ago, so let's say there was about maybe not quite a year and a half where there could be no evaluation, nothing from a recruiting standpoint. No one could come to campus. We couldn't go evaluate anybody. So our first time out after COVID was June of 21 at an event, a high school event that had to be sponsored by a state high school athletic association. So we were aware of KJ. Coach Willie Powers was sort of the lead guy on KJ, and obviously we were aware of Aunt Robinson here locally, and they were very good friends. As a matter of fact, until the summer of 22, the previous 3 summers, they played together on the same travel team, same AAU team. I think last week, just a couple of days ago, actually, KJ his aunt's dad called me and said they all went out to dinner with them. They're that close. So we actually saw the 2 of them playing together in Atlanta. And so this is coming off his state championship. And so you just saw a presence about him, that he plays the game with such a pace. It's hard to speed him up. That in and of itself, that's advanced. That's rare. That's one of the most difficult challenges that players have coming in, adjusting to the speed of the game. And that's the case at every level. You're here, NBA season start. You're here. He's got to be able to adjust to the speed of the game. High school guys, JUCO players, they have to be able to adjust to the speed of the game. So that transition is going to be a lot easier for him because just the pace he plays with. So when we went down, Coach Powers and I, to visit with them, some of you all may remember the name Rashard Anderson, who played for Lakeland Kathleen. That's considered one of the greatest high school teams, I guess, in quite some time. He went on to be a star at UConn, won a national championship at UConn. So they're very, very close. And he said, well, Coach, my dad's going to be out of town, but my uncle's going to sit in. I'm just thinking literally, it's literally his uncle. Well, Rashard Anderson is who he calls uncle. And Rashard's had such an impact on him as a player. And so whether it's Rashard or someone else, you can tell this kid has really been mentored and tutored on the court. He's been pushed. He's been driven, and he just kind of has a little it factor there, about him, and he can really shoot the basketball. And I'll close. He can really, really stroke it. When it leaves his hand, you think it's going in. So they determine who's going to play, but I knew it early. He'll play early and often.
Coach, projecting, how many players do you have returning, and how important would it be in helping these new 8 guys come in and really mesh with the team?
How important?
Yeah. And how many players do you have projected returning for next season?
Well, Dominga Stevens, Hans, Louis June, Jordan Chapman, those 3, and Chase Bars. Those 4 played the majority of the minutes. Deuce, Rich Matthews was a walk-on that played some. But those first 4 guys, those guys played quite a bit. I think, Chase probably started at least half the season, if not more, at the 5 spot. Hans and Jordan Chapman kind of went back and forth, starting at the 3 at the small forward spot.
Coach, finally for me, I know you've talked before about the transition from the MEAC to the SWAC and the style of play. You talked a lot about the need to get tougher. Has that been one of the big takeaways that you've taken from 2 years in the SWAC, is just how tough this league is?
Yeah, and I was sort of reluctant going in. Quite frankly, before we made the announcement that we were going to the SWAC, quite frankly, I really didn't watch very much other than I've known Johnny Jones, the head coach at Texas Southern, and I go way back. When I was an assistant coach at Florida, he was an assistant at LSU, and our paths would cross we'd recruit some of this, go up against each other, some of the same players and so forth. But aside from that, I knew very few coaches in the SWAC, and so once we made the announcement, my staff and I, obviously, we took different teams. You began scouting these 3 or 4 teams. All of us kind of took 3 or 4 teams each, and we, the latter games, which was the SWAC conference tournament, we scouted as closely as we could to give ourselves some degree of familiarity. And so even from that point forward, the athleticism of the SWAC. And again, I'm careful how I say that, because I don't want to imply that the teams in the MEAC weren't. Just like our staff and I talk about this a lot, the teams in the MEAC, they tend to, I don't know, I don't want to say that. Anyway, I would say, if you had to just kind of generally describe or characterize, the athleticism is what really jumps out at you. And you still have those challenges of these 3 or 4 teams are just going to constantly come at you with pressure. That's Southern. So you've got that. Grambling, just physical. Back court, front court. Similar with Prairie View, Texas Southern, just very, very physical. So our first year we played Texas Southern. You talk about they're starting center. He played 20 minutes a game for Houston the year they went to the Final Four. I mean, he's 6'9". I don't know, he had to be 245, 255, somewhere there. They just literally just beat you up. And so again, that's, you take a look and you go, wow, that's Alabama A&M was I think the biggest team in the league last year. Very, very. They had 2 small guards, but you look at their front line, you just amazed with the number of players, 6'8" or taller, their bodies. So yes, that's been the thing that's really stood out. I think more than anything else is kind of that aspect. Just teams kind of come after you more from a kind of in your face, from in the full court, or just physically just kind of overpowering you in the paint. And so again, there are things that you can't control, anybody, like injuries, but otherwise this team is able to now this team would be able to line up and contend, with any of those styles. And so.
Any more questions? One last question, Coach.
Yeah.
Is Isaac going to be replaced?
Who?
Isaac Brown, Coach Brown.
Well, we'll look to fill the spot. If he can be replaced, that's a different question. I'll just say, while we're here, couldn't be more appreciative. You talk about just an extremely talented. I said this has been over a year ago. Leonard Hamilton and I were talking about something, and I just said, I was talking about Isaac, I said, he's as good as anybody you got. And there was no put down. I was on his staff, but I meant that just he's so well-rounded, and some of y'all may or may not know he came out of our J school, and his skill set it speaks to that, you know. I mean, just with a lot of the gear that we have, he designs that, you know. Technology-wise, he's just so savvy, so advanced, and I mean, shoot, all of us, Coach CB, Craig Brown, Will, and I mean, gosh, there ain't a day where we're not in and out of his office, you know, 5-10 times a day, because rarely does he not have the answer, rarely. So yes, we'll replace him, but we'll fill the position, but yeah.